Are these scriptures inspired by Krishna? Maybe, I don't know. I can say a definite maybe. All right. Is the people following the instructions on those scriptures receiving any spiritual benefit? Yes, of course. Of course they're receiving spiritual benefit, because we would say that underneath all these scriptures, there must be some modum of bhakti involved. I mean, they're dealing with the relationship between the living entities and the Lord. And I'm sure you could find passages of the Bible, and sometimes devotees who are trying to, there are some devotees that if I go into their house, I find pictures of Jesus Christ all over their house, etc. So, some devotees feel that there is that connection and they feel inspiration by the Bible, etc. I mean, honestly speaking, I one time tried to read the New Testament, and there were some parts that I found interesting, but when I got to the part of the New Testament chapter called Hebrews, and they talked about cleansing the altar with the blood of a sacrificed animal, I thought, well, okay, but I'm not really going to cleanse any of my altars with the blood of an animal. So at that time, I stopped reading. Now, but I do feel that that remark is a little, somebody would say, well, that's a little bit too much to remark, to come to that kind of conclusion and remark that way, because that's not the essence of the Bible. But those are rights established perhaps in the Bible, and some of the histories presented in the Quran, presented in the Bible, Old and New Testament. There are sections there that we would not say that's not acceptable. I don't want to flunk or fail this test, this comparative religions test that I'm being given here. But what can I tell you? Is the people following the strict instructions on those scriptures receiving any spiritual benefit? I would say yes. They're receiving some spiritual benefit, because as Srila Govinda Maharaj says, those scriptures are capable of changing their conception of life. I mean, most people, if you talk to, they really don't want to know anything about spirituality or religion or devotional service. They feel that it's something too fanatic for them to just become involved with religion. Their conception of religion is, okay, I'll go to my church on certain special holidays. And incidentally, I feel that too many devotees, that's also their conception of devotional service, is that they'll go to the temple on certain holidays, and then they'll possibly do some devotional service on those holidays. And I'd say, if that's the best you can do, okay, that's fine. That's acceptable. But can it go any deeper than that? I mean, some of the devotees, they would feel that if you, like, when we hear about Srila Prabhupada's 4 regular principles, no meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, or gambling, they think, well, that's for ISKCON. In Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat, we only follow Trinada Pisuni Chena Taroriva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtani Sadahari. We only follow humility, offering respect to others, and tolerance. That's the real spiritual conception. And the regulative principles, those are for people who are more institutionalized, like in ISKCON, that they follow those principles. But I would say, in one sense, you can say that those principles are not exactly spiritual principles. In one sense they are, but you could say they're not just, but I would say those 4 regulative principles mean that you're not necessarily practicing devotion, but at least you're transcending the gross bodily conception of life, or an animal, I say animal conception of life, and you're coming a little bit to the principle of maybe goodness, where you or even Shuddha-sattva, so that you can understand what is devotion. Tell me if these answers are too random for you, if you want to know something more, because you're asking me. Okay, but I'm saying for many people, like normal people, they don't follow any principles of devotion. I'm not talking about devotees. I'm just talking about people in general, and they go to the church on Christmas or maybe Easter or something like that. Christians say. But I'm saying, but devotees, sometimes they'll come to the temple for Gurudev's appearance, his disappearance, appearance of major Vaishnavas, a few special appearances day, Nishringa Chaturdasi, maybe, as I said, Gaur Purnima, Krishna Janmastami, maybe 6-7 days of the year they'll come to the temple, or maybe 10. But I feel that that's kind of, now it's becoming a little bit like practitioners of other religions. I know that a devotee's consciousness and faith will go deeper than just some formality. But at the same time, we would try to encourage people to have a more devotional participation in other words, that they themselves are engaged in something more of devotional service. And some people say, I'm very busy. I'm working like a dog just to be able to maintain my family, etc., and working hard. And I do give some donations to the temple, and I sometimes, I'll bring some offerings to the temple, like maybe I'll donate some chairs or some jackets or some, something needed in the temple, or maybe I give a card to the temple. So you can't say that people are not participating just because they don't physically show up. But some people are doing the best they can, so I don't want to criticize. Anyway, but I would say in some cases, we would hope that it goes beyond just the participation, like people going to the church, etc., on a few days of the year. In verse 8 of Upadeshamrita, engage the tongue and mind in the gradual process of chanting and remembering Krishna's names, forms, pastimes, and so forth. Reside in Braja and spend all your time as a follower of those who have deep attachment to Krishna. This is the essence of all instructions. One of Srila Rupa Goswami's instruction is to reside in Braja. Is that literally, or more to take to the heart in the conscious plane? Some people take this instruction very seriously and live in the holy Dham. Could you please explain the meaning of that instruction? Well, I know that sometimes it'll say to reside in a temple or a place where the pastimes of the Lord are being observed or practiced, which would be, to reside in Vrindavan, but other times it will say you can get that. That would also mean about residing in a temple, etc., of the Lord. So what is this? If you're we're not residing in Vrindavan. Somebody may come to that conclusion that I want to leave the world in Navadip, or I want to leave the world in Vrindavan, or I want to live in Vrindavan, or I want to live in Navadip. So maybe somebody will take that literally and they'll want to live in Vrindavan. Fine, that's nice. I personally, to tell you, I personally didn't always think about living in Vrindavan. because I thought, and Vrindavan is for a place of very elevated souls. It's where Madhurya Ras is being, people are entering in the participation. So I myself, I never really thought so much about living in Vrindavan, because I thought, well, there's a special mercy from Mahaprabhu that would be more, more obtain. I mean, I wanted the mercy of living in Mahaprabhu's holy dham, and Goramandala Bhumi, or if I couldn't be there, Kolkata, with Srila Govinda Maharaj, any country, any place with Srila Govinda Maharaj, etc. Okay. So do I consider living in Vrindavan, is that to be taken literally, or is to be, I believe the idea, and I know Srila Prabhupada, he says that living in Vrindavan can mean living in a temple. So the temple may be, for instance, in London, and some of you live in the temple, either the East London temple or the West London temple. Some persons are living there. So I would consider that to be as like living in Vrindavan. I mean, then is that okay with that answer about Vrindavan? Is that all right? Saraswati, do you want me to extend that answer? Devashis, what do you think? I mean, I feel that, how you take it to live in Vrindavan. I mean, there's some consideration. We would say some people literally fast on Ekadasi, but in the Mat, they did not do that. They did not do that. They didn't fast completely. They took anukalpa. So I would say, if rather than live in Vrindavan, if you can go to Navadip or go to where we have a temple, not Navadip, because right now we don't even have a temple in Navadip. We have a temple, and because the present temple in Navadip is not directly under what we consider, at least the devotees in the West would consider to be, under the guidance of Govinda Maharaj, etc. So I wouldn't necessarily go to live in Navadip, but I could go to wherever the mission is. And if the missions, for instance, if we have devotees and you want to engage in Vrindavan, and we have a mission there, you could do that. You could go to Kolkata, or, I can't say in India where we have a temple in the holy dham, but I could see you could just move in, you could just join in one of the London temples and begin engaging in full-time devotional service in the temple, if that's really your total commitment, carries you to the level. I want to leave my job, and I want to leave my present situation, and I want to become a full-time devotee, and I want to live in an ashram, etc. Fine, we have ashrams. There's 2 in London. There's different places throughout the world. You can go where your heart takes you to live and do devotional service, rather than just live in a dharmshala in Vrindavan, or you could live in the Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Man in Vrindavan. But how much engagement you would have there? Okay, you could go to Govardhan. I believe, who's there? Who's it?
Uma.
Uma is a very wonderful person. She could give, if you want to live in Vrindavan, you want to reside in Govardhan, somebody says, that's the only thing I want. I don't want to live in, okay, you can go live in Govardhan, and not Kumkum. Uma can engage you. I find her to be a very sweet and wonderful person. That's my evaluation of Uma. But you can also go to, You can go to West London, East London, become a servant of Shri Radha Syamasundara. About Vrindavan, is anybody planning on giving up their day job and going to Vrindavan? Instruction is to reside in Braja. How's that verse go? Sarvadharmam parijam mamikam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashyami ma shuchaha. Okay, it looks like I'm done with this thing. So Guru Maharaj says, he comments that there Braja doesn't in that verse, it's not literally meaning Vrindavan, but he says there is a sound equivalent. You can say something that will draw your consciousness to Vrindavan in that verse. So then, if that is so, then I would say your living in Vrindavan should be preceded by Sarvadharmam parijamamikam sharanam vraja. You surrender to the Lord. You surrender to the Lord, and as Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Sridhar Maharaj mentions, you can put everything in your Navadip account, and it will be mysteriously transferred to your Vrindavan account. So there we have an indication of a transference of spiritual funds from Navadip mysteriously transferred to Vrindavan. Then it would seem to me to indicate that if you live in a temple where you're living in the land of Mahaprabhu, that's the same as living in Vrindavan, right? Would you agree with that, or am I stretching things?
No, definitely, Maharaj.
Okay, so that's definite. And where that will be, and you can say, well, I don't know. Where do we have any temples in Navadip, et cetera, where I can surrender and say, well, everything is an ongoing process. And, maybe by the time you're ready to move to the Holy Land, so to speak, maybe there will mysteriously have occurred that there is an ashram there available at that time where you can go to. But if you say, I want to go immediately, all right, you can go immediately to Vrindavan. There are devotees of our mission. There are devotees in Vrindavan. You can go visit the devotees. There'll be lots of devotees going to India, I believe, for Gaur Purnima. So you can join with the devotees, look around, be with the devotees, and decide. And maybe that'll be some inspiration for you to know where you want to dedicate all your energy. But, and I will say this, what is the difference, in one sense, if you engage yourself in living in a temple and trying to distribute sukriti to all the persons of that land, and you're surrendering to our divine Guru Parampara, to Mahaprabhu, and to the service of Radha Govinda? What are you going to lose with that? Is there some loss? For instance, Saraswati, who else? Also Lavanya Moyi. You live in the temple. You live in the temple there of West London. Yeah, I see Lavanya Moyi. So are you crying every day because you're not living in Vrindavan? No, you're happy there. Devashis is engaged in the service of Sri Guru Gauranga Radha Syamasundara. Are you happy doing that?
Yes, Maharaj, most happy.
Yeah. So apparently people are happy doing that. Of course, would you equate this with living in Vrindavan? Does it seem It just seem to you that, for instance, serving Sri Radha Syamasundara or serving Sri Guru Gauranga Gandharva, is it what are the deity? Oh, Sri Guru, what is the deity in West London called? Sri Guru Gauranga Gandharva. Huh?
Gauranga Radha Giridharju.
Okay, Sri Guru Gauranga Radha Giridharju. So you have that service, and that's very wonderful. You're happy doing that, right?
Very happy indeed.
Okay.
It's not really a location, is it, Maharaj?
Yeah. Well, they say location, location, location. Everything's about a location. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're living in the temple and engaged in devotional service, that's the same as living in Vrindavan. That's my conclusion. My conclusion. And somebody can say, well, but I lived in the temple and I was always in Maya. I could say, all right. Maybe that's another topic, isn't it? Maya can come into any place. It can even come into your presence in Vrindavan, in the temple of Vrindavan. I remember one time I heard Srila Prabhupada say, somebody said something about being in Maya. And Prabhupada said, you tell me where there is not Maya, and I want to move there. He's saying that facetiously, of course. He's always in Vrindavan, but he's saying that anywhere you go, there's going to be Maya. And if you're, they say, some people who always have accidents, they say they're accident prone, right? So if you're Maya prone, Maya's going to find you. Is it not? If you're Mayika prone or something. Anyway, Holy Dham, could you please explain the meaning of Haribol Didi? We're so fortunate that Maharaj is giving us. I'm in Europe now, away from the devotees temporarily. How can a practitioner feel closer to Krishna when there is no good association, such as other Krishna conscious practitioners around in person? Well, first, how can a practitioner feel closer to Krishna when there is no good association, such as other Krishna conscious practitioners around in person? Well, you could preach to some friends and make them devotees, and then you have some association, or you could marry somebody and make them a devotee and then have some association. That's also possible. Then you'd have some association. If you made all your friends into devotees and all of a sudden they gathered together and they wanted to make a temple, then you'd have association. It is possible that you could find somebody of like mind who you could preach to. Basically, I understand someone's by themselves, they have no devotional association. Would it be possible for that person to, find some devotional association, or would it be possible for that person to move to a place where there are devotees? Is that, somebody can say, no, that's not possible. I have a high-paying job. I live in this foreign country, and my mother, my father, they're dependent on my salary or something. Okay. Well, we also have these Zoom meetings and other forms of communication, and you can also engage in some devotional service. I'm sure if you contact some of the leaders of the temples here, like like Lavanyamoyi or Saraswati or Devashis, they can also engage you in devotional service, isn't it? And maybe you can put an ad in one of the local newspapers asking for devotees to come forward willing to engage in devotional service. I don't know. Well, my inclination would be, if I'm in a place where I don't have any association, my personal inclination would be to go to a place where I would have devotional association. But for many people, I can understand, because of the economic situation, that they're earning money, they're providing for their family, etc., that may be impossible. So then you'll have to do the best you can. We're trying to offer some kind of, it's not the same, perhaps, digital association. And then I would say, to have some, what can you do? You can have some relationship with the mutt, with the ashrams, by engaging in devotional service, perhaps by helping the devotees in their, maybe you want to help print some books, and you want to receive those books, and maybe you want to distribute those books where you're living. That's a possibility. So you communicate with, right now, I know in London, they have many books in stockpile, right? Is that true?
Yes.
There's a good number of books. So then you could also order some books. Some books are basically introductory, like Search for Sri Krishna or Home Comfort or Inner Fulfillment or The Original Source. Do you have any of those books in stock there in London?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, there have those or other books. Some of Govinda Maharaj's books, some of, some books by Guru Maharaj, Srila Maharaj. There's books that you can read and books that you can distribute, and maybe you can also, in that way, help economically by ordering some books, or maybe contributing to the temple, etc. There's so many ways you can engage in devotional service, but that's what I would do if I were in the position where I didn't have any. Where's the person who wrote that question? Saraswati. Don't tell me his name, but anyway, you got the idea of what I'm saying. You can. One person who was taking sannyas, was a sannyasi. He told Guru Maharaj, Srila Maharaj, well, I can't wear these clothes where I am. I'm not able to do that. And then Srila Maharaj said, then go someplace else. Go someplace else. So it's not, what I'm talking about is not a question of how you dress, but a question of how you can proceed in your devotional service. So if you feel that the atmosphere where you're living, for one reason or another, there's not any practitioners, but you feel it's highly detrimental to your devotional service for one reason or another, you can go somewhere else. You can go where there are devotees. You can go engage in that way. Somebody could say, the atmosphere where I'm living is so hostile to devotional service, I can't even pretend to be a devotee, etc. Well, I would find that hard to believe, but I'm still saying there could be some places like that. You could say, well, the most extreme cases, you could say the person, well, you can just chant and follow the principles, read the books, etc., and say, try to, in this way, develop the consciousness of a devotee. And that person could say, well, I'm being so much persecuted in the present place where I'm living. It's so hostile to devotional service. I cannot even do that here. I would say that's hard to imagine, but if it is so, go somewhere else. Find a way. Look at the case of Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami, his father and mother, didn't want him to be with Mahaprabhu. And he always dreamed. He always hankered to be with Mahaprabhu, and he got that opportunity. Even though he had a beautiful wife and had so much, his family was so wealthy, but he desired to escape that situation and go with Mahaprabhu. And ultimately, that's what he did. Why? The blessings of Nityananda Prabhu, and he was able to escape his material entanglement. And I've seen there are some places, some devotees have told me, I live with my father and my mother, my father and my mother, they have taken away, they have confiscated all my devotional pictures, they took away my japa beads and things like that. They won't allow any devotional scriptures in the house. I've heard of those cases. That may sound like so beyond the pale of credibility. How could you live in that kind of a place? Well, it is possible that the person could be so much devastated, Oh, back to the questions. Did we answer that question all right? Somebody's saying, well, maybe they want a more philosophical answer. How can a practitioner feel closer to Krishna when there is no good association, such as other Krishna conscious practitioners around in person? Where's our Tungarasa? She might be in this position. Tungarasa. Oh, Tungarasa. You, Krishna.
Dandavat.
Are you there in Norway by yourself?
Actually, yes. Actually, but I'm trying to find some friends, yes, to whom I can talk or share. Today, I was talking to my therapist about Krishna consciousness, was inviting him to Zoom. I will see if he will come, if he will join.
I remember when Udamanyu, Seva Vikram, he was teaching at a new place in China. I think he was in Chengdu at the time, and he had a job teaching English there. And one of the first things he put on the bulletin board was, big party at my place tonight. And he's a teacher. And then the party was because it was Radhastami, and he had advertised a big party at his place, and people that went there for Radhastami. And he was in his own way bringing students into his house and having spiritual programs with them. So maybe it was different than their idea of what a party is, but well, he had there and he preached to them, and then he served them nice prasadam, and many of them were very happy. So many people have become devotees because of prasadam. Is that true, or am I exaggerating?
Very true.
Is there anyone here that maybe at least in part became a devotee because they liked the prasadam?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Who did? Do you?
Everyone.
Of course, Maharaj.
Really, everyone. I think in one way, everyone, unless they were in a place where there were no cooks except them. But okay. And you, Krishna Chaitanya, are you in a place where there are other devotees around?
No, Maharaj, there are not. Okay,
but what what advice would you give to somebody in your situation who has no practitioners around them? What advice from your own experience could you give?
So I'm trying to communicate through the internet by having Zoom classes, just by chatting. We have several groups in popular messengers. We call each other. So I'm also trying to read some scriptures several times a week. If there is a chance I can help a temple or someone in their service, I will do that.
Do you ever have any programs where you live and just invite persons who are not devotees there to the programs?
I have never done that, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. But I mean, still, there is ways, even if you're by yourself, of it being able to function. I mean, there's also a distinction, which I don't know what Guru Maharaj defines it, but there's a difference between Goshtanandi and Bhajananandi. And some persons actually are a little bit solitary by nature. I'm not saying Krishna Chaitanya is or anyone like that, but there are persons who actually prefer to live somewhat by themselves, read the books, practice their, chant on japa, attend programs via Zoom, Skype, chat, or whatever. They're engaged in. I mean, that's one of the nice things. When everybody was in lockdown because of COVID, many persons had to deal with the same situation because they were by themselves and they were in lockdown. They couldn't leave. They couldn't leave. What? They couldn't leave where they lived. They had to function as what we're talking about in a condition. And I think in many ways that made persons understand, one, of how nice it is to be able to get some association with other persons, to find some like-minded persons who will engage or who one can relate with. Many families who maybe before the husband and wife was working, the kids were going to school. Now they couldn't go to school, the kids. Now the husband couldn't go to his job. The wife couldn't go to her job. And then they started participating in more devotional activities. All of a sudden we found that the participation in, for instance, in Facebook of classes that are being given online, all of a sudden the numbers went up very high. Previously, they were not so high. Then all of a sudden, many persons, they wanted to now attend programs on Facebook. Now people are going back to work, and perhaps they actually have less time to hear and participate in the programs. But in one sense, even as how kind of bitter some of those conditions were in lockdown and everything, they actually did open up new doors for persons to participate in devotional activities, which I thought was very encouraging. And in part, these Zoom conferences have developed because of some of the lockdown conditions during the COVID times. Isn't that true? You think that's true?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Brought many persons online, many persons in association. But also I said there is a difference between Bhajananandi and Goshtanandi. Some people, I wouldn't exactly call everyone Bhajanandi, that they're all the time engaged in bhajan, because Srila Guru Maharaj said that term bhajan is so high. We don't call necessarily what we sing. We don't call them bhajans. We say we're engaging in kirtan because we're not bhajananandis. We're not that kind of devotee who is so much absorbed that, I mean, what kind of a definition could we give to bhajan? According to Guru Maharaj, the term bhajan is a level of consciousness which is very high, very intense for us. Okay, maybe a little too high for us. Okay. Then back. What is the meaning? The meaning of the different hand positions of the deities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu: one hand up and one hand down, two hands up, two hands down. One hand up and one hand down. Well, maybe during kirtan we do one hand up. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo, with one hand up. All right. And offering, very auspicious, one hand up. I mean, generally speaking, you'll see devotees also, isn't it? During kirtan. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bo, and chanting, raising. All right. I don't know. In other words, I don't exactly know this question. One hand up and one hand down, two hands up. All right. Two hands up. Calling out to the Lord, Hari Hari, with two hands up. Two hands down. Okay. I'm not really, does someone have an answer for this? One hand up, one hand down, two hands up, or two hands down, deity positions. Can we hear the words of some expert pujari? Can anybody say, what is one hand up? I think that's the normal position in Mahaprabhu, in the deity form, one hand up. I believe, because they offering blessings, offering dancing, kirtan, one hand up. Two hands up. If one hand up is good, maybe two hands up is better. Three hands up is more good. I don't know. Two hands down. Well, maybe so. I don't know about Mahaprabhu. We can't hold our hands up forever, so then they become two hands down. Okay. And what does it mean when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stands alone on the altar, or with Krishna and Radha, or with Nityananda Prabhu? What does it mean? When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu stands alone on the altar? Well, many temples, we don't have many temples. We have Mahaprabhu on the altar because that is our worship. And in some cases, the devotees don't have the necessary devotees to have Mahaprabhu and Radha Govinda, but also some devotees will consider Mahaprabhu alone is, for me, he's Sri Krishna Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahiyanya. He is Radha and Krishna. That's all I need is Mahaprabhu. Then some devotees worshipped like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, like Dvijabani Nath. They worship Gaur Gadadhar. So Mahaprabhu on the altar. In many of our temples, we do have Mahaprabhu alone on the altar. And some people say, well, why don't you have Gaur Nitai? Why do you have Mahaprabhu alone on the altar? Well, I would say, in answer to that, if you have Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, I would say that is more, to me, indicative of Sakya Ras, because you're having Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, and that's like Krishna Balaram. It's going in the direction of Sakya Ras, that relationship. And Mahaprabhu did send Nityananda Prabhu to preach in Bengal. So I'd say many grihastas they worship Gornitai. It's natural in their house. There are many grihastas. But generally, what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established in the temples was Gauranga Sundar and Radha Govinda. They have different names, of course. Radha Govinda could have a name like Gandharva Govinda Sundar, or Radha could have Radha Syamasundara, like in East London. But they have Mahaprabhu and Radha Syamasundara. And then some temples, as we said, well, they don't have the, I won't say manpower, I'll say they don't have the person power, to be, what is it, correct? What's the word? Something correct?
Politically correct.
Politically correct. They don't have the, do you call a mail? Do you have the word mailman there?
Postman, we say.
Postman. Here they would say mailman because you're receiving the mail. So I guess you'd have to call that a person. Or you could say a post person, right? Can you use the word post person?
Yeah, I suppose.
Post person. But anyway, they don't have, in some temples, they don't have the devotees to maintain the more, the more, what's the word? The more exact, I wouldn't want to use the word exacting, but I would say the more involved worship of Shishi, Guru, Gauranga, Radha, Syamasundara, Radha Govinda, or Gandharva Govinda Sundar. I mean, don't have that. So they worship Mahaprabhu. I mean, Saraswati, I remember she wrote me originally when they talking about installing Mahaprabhu in London. And she said, well, I don't know if we have, in our temples, we don't have people that will consume the quantities of rice that one would offer to the deities, and my children, etc. They eat pasta, etc. And then I told her back, then make pasta, offer pasta. I said, pasta is no more processed than rice. Rice is very processed nowadays. I mean, in the old days of the Chaitanya-charitamrita, rice was dehusked mechanically, because nowadays and in the process of being mechanically dehusked, the rice would become a little bit broken. Parts of it could be broken. But a way of getting the rice out of the husk is to just boil the rice, at least partially boil the rice, and it comes right out of the husk. But some Vaishnavas in time of Mahaprabhu, they wouldn't do that because they would consider that if the rice is partially boiled to get the husk off of it, it means it may be cooked by a non-devotee in the most literal of definitions. So then they had a special kind of way of getting the paddy dehusked mechanically, but sometimes maybe a little bit of the rice would become damaged in that process. But nowadays, all the rice there's no question of husk. We buy bags of rice and there's no husk on it. Now one can only question how that rice, the husk is taken off of it. And then we could say that white rice in general is more processed than, say, brown rice. Although when Govinda Maharaj was in Sokel, and one time I was making brown rice, Govinda Maharaj looked at it like, what's that? And I said, brown rice. And he looked at it, I guess because of the color, he called it McDonald's rice. Maybe because that brown rice looks like hamburger Looks like hamburger or something. I don't know, but he called it McDonald's rice, brown rice. He didn't say, oh, brown rice is so much better. It's organically more organic and it's more wholesome. And no, I mean, in one sense, you could say basmati rice is less processed than maybe the white rice we buy in the marketplace. And they even do have some brown rice, which is basmati rice. But I just say, in general, I think much of the rice we consume, I could say in some ways, is no more processed than the pasta that you buy in packages. Or is somebody going to give me an argument about that? Is that what somebody say? That's not true at all. You're inventing that. Is it true or not? Is pasta more processed than rice? Maybe. But I still stick to my position that pasta can be offered. If you're offering rice, I believe you could offer pasta. Some people say, yeah, well, I prefer to make the pasta and noodles myself. I say, well, wonderful. Wonderful you do that. But in general, the pasta that you make yourself won't be as thin and nice as the pasta that you'll buy in the store. And if you want to be completely fanatical, you can buy, what is it? They have spinach pasta too, right?
Yeah.
So I told to that Saraswati, I told her, if your kids only want to eat, don't want to eat rice, then offer pasta. Now somebody could say, Maharaj, you can't offer pasta. And I could say, well, I just did. Maharaj, you can't offer pasta. Why not? I put it in front of a picture of Gurudev and I offered it. What's the problem? You don't want to eat it? Okay, then I won't offer it to you. Then they could say, is that pasta offered? And they say, didn't you hear? I just offered it to you. You want some pasta? All right, enough frivolous answers. And what does it mean when Lord Chaitanya, stands on the altar? What does it mean when Lord Chaitanya stands on the altar with 2 feet or with 1 foot or 1 foot raised in the air? All right, how to read the environment. Oh, and what does it mean when Lord Chaitanya stands alone? Okay. Stands on the altar alone, or with Radha and Krishna, or with Nityananda Prabhu. I would say when he's alone, no, Sri Krishna, Chaitanya, Radha Krishna, and Nahyanya. We worship also Mahaprabhu alone, and Radha and Krishna are both within Mahaprabhu. So there's no shortcoming. But when he's alone, well, when he's with Radha and Radha and Krishna, that's the worship that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur introduced. Guru Maharaj used that worship, and if that's the worship that's being described in the Saraswati Arti, which we sing. I don't know, here we sing it every day. Do you sing Saraswati Arti in both London temples?
Yeah, every day.
Every day? Lavanya Moyi, every day there?
Yes, Maharaj, every day.
Okay, so there. When I first joined, when I first joined, they only sang Saraswati Arti on Friday. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And then we established the deities here. Actually, we established Mahaprabhu. So then I asked if Govinda Maharaj, if we could sing Saraswati Arti every day. And he said, yes, why not? And then after that, he issued a dictum, so to speak, that they sing Saraswati Arti every day in all the temples. So at first when I joined, that wasn't the practice, but you could say that I'm the cause of that problem. Before we could just sing less time, and now this Janardan Maharaj, we don't know about him. How to read the environment properly in accordance with Krishna's will. How to read the environment properly in accordance with Krishna's will. I don't know that. Guru Maharaj says that the environment is always favorable. And he also comments that one of the purposes of the Bhagavad Gita, everything that's happening, is to change us to the consciousness that we cannot necessarily change the environment, but the environment will come to change us. Do you think that's true? Do you also find that true? That it's not so much a matter that you can change the environment, but that the environment comes to change you, and that process of changing you is always positive. And we can say the environment is always positive, but the environment does change you, and that is a positive change. To come to that understanding that the environment does change me. That's the conclusion that Arjuna came to, that the environment comes to change us. And it's much less of us changing the environment. Somebody can say, well, there's some persons who are great reformists. They have done so much change to help positively to so many persons. They've changed so much that we can say that they have changed the environment. I could say, well, maybe it appears that way, but maybe their contribution also came because they were forced to change, or they had to adopt that course of action because first the environment came and changed them and made them the reformers that they became. That's also quite true. I mean, the environment came to change Arjuna. Arjuna at first was of the consciousness that Krishna, I will not fight, and let the Gandiva bow slide from his hands, and he was sitting in lamentation on the chariot. And what was Krishna's first, like we can say, first slap to Arjuna? Not literally, but in the form of what he said. He said, how have you allowed these petty weaknesses to come upon you? They are not worthy of a Vaishnava. Something to that effect, isn't it?
Yes.
How have these petty one? Then he goes on, one who is actually advanced laments neither for the living nor the dead, right? So certainly there is so much about there's so much that can happen in the environment which will change us. And you may be in a situation where even those persons around you are being killed. Like maybe there's a situation, there are countries, maybe in the countries in the world where there is an enemy killing our friends and relatives. Maybe that's also possible. Then somebody can say, well, how is the environment favorable or friendly in those conditions? And I would say, well, the environment apparently was quite hostile in the conditions of Arjuna. Arjuna tried to make some compromise with the Kauravas, and he said, well, if you just give each of us brothers a village, then we will not cause any trouble. Perhaps I'm misstating this. But then he received the answer from Duryodhana and company. We will not give you as much land in which you can put one needle or one pin. We will not give you any accommodation at all, zero. You have no choice but to fight. Well, you can say, how can you say that the environment is favorable under those conditions? And we could say, because those conditions were very difficult, but that was Krishna's divine will. Things were happening in that way and on that plane by Krishna's divine will. So we cannot indicate that our present circumstance is, what can you say? We cannot say our present circumstance is necessarily, well, would you say it's Krishna's divine will that I be put in difficulty, etc.? Well, in the Bhagavad Gita, with the situation with Krishna and the Pandavas, you could say, yes, it was Krishna's divine will. But then again, we say, as before, the environment comes to change us. So with Arjuna and his brothers, the environment came to change them. And Kunti Devi, she said, we welcome these difficulties. We welcome them because every time we're put in difficulty, we're in a more close relationship with Krishna. Krishna comes to save us from those difficulties. So we may also consider in that way that how can you say the environment's favorable? My boss just first kicked me, and then first he kicked me, and then he kicked me out. So how's that favorable? I have no job, I have no income, I have no place to live. I'm sleeping in the streets and I'm bathing with cold street water. How can you say that's favorable? Well, maybe you're getting some indication that you should move into a temple, Prabhu. There we will provide you with all the niceties of life. Warm water. Sometimes warm water. And 3 squares a day. You know what that refers to, 3 squares a day? Do they have that expression in the UK?
Yeah.
3 meals a day.
Yeah.
Three offerings, you'll get 3 meals a day, and they will consist of sumptuous prasadam. Isn't it? Sumptuous. Sometimes I'll complain that sometimes that the devotees don't know. Sometimes I'm served something that indicates the person who cooked didn't know how to cook or had an off day. But that's my fault. That's because I'm making some offense to prasadam. Why did you put salt in the halva instead of sugar? Oh, Prabhu, I made a mistake. All right, back to these questions. On the altar, we can how to read the environment properly in accordance with Krishna's will. Well, I don't know. When Arjuna, he said, one of the things after he said, I will not fight, and he said, now I'm confused about my duty, Krishna. I surrender to you, please instruct me. That also he said at that time. So apparently, and it said, even though Arjuna and Krishna were friends, he at that time is accepting Krishna as if his guru. He's saying, now I am a disciple. I'm a soul surrendered to you. You please instruct me. And then what did Krishna say? He said, well, you're talking like you're a learned person. That's the first instruction. Then after you could say, Arjuna surrendered to Krishna. Krishna, first instruction says, more or less, you're a fool. You're a fool. You're asking questions as if you're a learned person, but a learned person never grieves for which you're grieving. Then he says, the wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So apparently there's some of that lamentation going on, and that it says, Rama bhuta prashanatma na shochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labate param. Na shochati, in this world, everyone is engaged in shochati. That means some lamentation, and nakankshati, some longing. So how does that work? Works. Lamentation and longing goes like this. Well, first we'll do longing, and then we'll do lamentation. Longing and then lamentation. I want. I lost. I want this. Why do you want it? Because what I had before, I lost. I was successfully married, but then my wife ran off with my best friend and took my dog with her. Now we're getting into the realm of, in America, what we call country and Western music. My wife ran off with my best friend and took my dog with her. And then there was a song that said about, I guess, the divorce process. It says, she got the gold mine and she got the gold ring and I got the finger. Well, now that's a little, not in a devotional environment. We don't talk like that. All right. So, but even in those circumstances, the environment comes to change you. You're supposed to change. You're not supposed to just be in lamentation. No shochati, no kankshati. No lamentation and no great longing. And how can we interpret that also? Well, doesn't Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he says, forget the past at sleep and near the future dream it all. So maybe the past equates with shochati, that you're crying about what you lost. And maybe in near the future dream at all, that kankshati, you're hankering for what you're soon to order from Amazon. Anyway, how to read the environment. Read the Bhagavad Gita, then you can read the environment. If you want to know how to read the environment, read the Bhagavad Gita. And I suggest not any Bhagavad Gita, but Hidden Treasure of the Sweet Absolute, or the Bhagavad Gita as it is. All right. So are we done with questions? I think we're running out of time, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 hours.
All right, 2 hours of listening to well, not 2 hours, because at least some of the time I was engaged with the person who was attending me on the internet, but he did change my ticket, so I consider that was somewhat successful, right?
Yeah.
Very nice. Jagannath Express is still open?
Yeah, they have like 4 restaurants now in Moscow.
Yeah, one before they had one Jagannath Express, and then they purchased three McDonald's that closed down. No, that's not true. All right. All right, dandavas to all of you.